What's good, YouTube? This video is going to be about the whole phase, but it's not about what men think about promiscuous women. It's not about what I personally think about promiscuous women. It's not about following a bunch of rules to get more guys. It's about the things that I believe no one tells young women about the whole phase that they should, especially more experienced people. Each one teach one is one of the most powerful ways to learn. Someone with wisdom and experience and knowledge, lending you theirs so that ultimately you can apply it and lend it to others. This is how most of us learn. With that said, some people are hell-bent on making their own mistakes. I get that. But that doesn't negate our responsibility to teach what we know. I won't speculate on the reasons that older and more mature and more experienced women aren't guiding younger women in this way, that there aren't more efforts to spread this information. But because I see a hole, I'll do my best to fill it. With that said, the women who escape the whole phase better off are the few, not the many. I want you to know that I'm not here to judge you. That's not what this video is about, but I do want to help you understand something. The whole phase is the single most destructive portion of your dating life. It's where you learn that love is cheap and your heart is disposable. It's the period that you're taught that your body is not a temple, but a dry erase board. And just like an old dirty dry erase board, the smears and the marks left behind start to accumulate and become harder to erase in time. The whole phase teaches you that you are less than deserving, less than lovable, and less valuable than a man. It also acclimates you to destructive dating habits, to blame, to avoid, or to run when things get difficult. In fact, it's made many women incapable of healthy love. I always find it funny how people who have dated for so long, for so many years, with so many people, haven't developed relationship skills. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to listen. They don't know how to adequately enough interpret. They don't know how to negotiate, cooperate. If the whole phase was valuable, then relationship skills would be built in it. But most of the time, people just learn a bunch of toxic patterns. They learn to run away from their relationships when they become inconvenient. They learn how to neglect their partners, how to put up with being neglected by their partners. They learn to abandon and how to accept abandonment. They learn how to mistrust, how to disrespect and be disrespected. This period usually results in a lack of faith in relationships in general. That love is possible and that faithfulness or fidelity at all, it can be achieved. Many of the most damaged relationship unfit, unready men have had a long and extensive whole phase, where now they've learned how to dispose of women, shit on them, treat them like crap, use them for their egos exclusively, and don't know how to nurture and don't know how to lead and don't know how to contribute to a household if their life depended on it. That's because quantity doesn't mean quality. And the same thing happens to women. Dating women who have those types of histories is more difficult because they're less trusting. They have lower self-esteem. They need more assurance, more validation, while also being more callous, less warm, less nurturing, more volatile. Men and women are both damaged by ill-informed sexual journeys. So when they come together and try to have a household, they ultimately don't have the skill sets required. This is another reason why marriages fail at the rates they fail at. Because women aren't coming into the marriages like they used to come into them. Men aren't coming into the marriages like they used to come into them. Everything is temporary. Relationships are microwaved. It's all about pleasure and having fun and being convenient. And when relationships aren't those things, people leave, or people are destructive, or people become toxic and abusive. Most of those patterns start with the man or woman's whole phase. If I could sum up the whole phase in one word, it would be damaging. Not just because of what society may think of them because they wear the scarlet letter, but because of what they learn to think about themselves. The truth is, it's hard to go through a whole phase without ultimately becoming acclimated to being treated like a hoe. Being treated that way and being looked down on constantly by people who probably don't even deserve your attention, let alone your body, starts to build callousness in you over time. This is done through the constant need to even defend your right as a human being to choose or desire a whole phase to begin with. Because how dare you have an unhealthy human experience equal to that of a man's destructive and immature patterns? This builds envy for and resentment in you for men for their social freedom to have destructive habits and be reckless. And this programs you to subhumanize men in response to that trauma, as if they don't hurt or feel pain or deserve grace. Seeing that unmet need in you causes you to start to abandon that need for partners, which is understandable though. It's hard to empathize with those who don't respect you and seek only to make use of you and not be useful to you, which is what your primary experience in the whole phase is. If you engage in the whole phase from a very broken or an unhealed place, which many do, it only exacerbates your trauma. You either become bitter and damaged from consistently being walked away from first, or you become callous from learning not to care as a means to winning the battle of the sexes. Listen, if you don't know who you are, this world will tell you. It's best to take assigning yourself an identity seriously. In coaching over 4,000 women, I couldn't begin to tell you how many of those women's primary trauma started in the whole phase. As much as we like to deny it, companionship is a human need that is very difficult for most of us to turn off. A lot of my clients ultimately admit that their whole phases were not about fun, but desperation, seeking validation, and taking what felt like control of their relationships out of fear. Basically rejecting love before it could reject them, before it could disappoint their inner child again like an unfit parent or relative. Yet and still, many women engaged in it openly and fervently looking for love, and only found out after taking on a bunch of damage that love is not usually acquired through these methods. And on top of the damage that it ultimately causes a lot of women emotionally and mentally, which may be discovered in hindsight, it also distracts and delays, if not totally prevents, a young woman's ultimate goal, which is generally becoming a wife and a mother of a healthy family. Healthy relationships, healthy marriage, long-term and lasting partnership, having an abundance of choice of the type of man that she can marry. The whole phase is a direct contradiction of the type of quality a woman wants to choose in men, because she no longer represents that quality from a societal standard. Adverse selection has made her less trustworthy for the men she would actually want to marry, because just like nature causes women to date the strongest, the biggest, the best, it also causes men to do the same, just in ways that are relevant to a man's seed survival. That's not to say a woman can't find someone or she can't have a family. Obviously, there are a bunch of women who have been through their whole phase, enjoyed themselves, had as much fun as they wanted to, and still ended up a wife and a mother of a healthy family. But they are the few, not the many. Even those who get to the marriage don't have the same relationship skills and have so much damage that they have things to outlearn or unlearn. They have more toxic relationships. They have more distrust in their relationships, and they have less success overall in their relationships than the women who have actually focused on their primary goal of being wives and mothers and whatever career they wanted. Some people think love is a distraction from their goals. They go to college, they have a whole phase so they can focus on their career. But the emotional damage that it does, and the mental health damage that it does, and the self-esteem damage that it does, is actually much more distracting than a healthy relationship would be if you were doing your studies and chasing a career. We all know that the professional market usually makes a more callous, perceivably masculine woman who has to fight in male-dominated societies. If the skill sets you learn at work don't help you in relationships, and the skill sets you learned in the whole phase don't, how fit will you be when a relationship calls? Coaching 4,000 women, I've not been able to find very many instances where the whole phase of a young woman helped her or made her better. Most are just losing time, programming insecurities into themselves, having fatherless children, learning that they are disposable, that they don't deserve love, they don't deserve consideration, they don't deserve respect, that commitment doesn't happen, that every man cheats, that they can never have what they want, that they might as well give up, and all these other types of self-destructive beliefs that ultimately lead them away from the one thing they wanted, was stability in their relationships. Again, it's not my belief that this is what a woman deserves. I don't think they do. I'm just sharing my observation from coaching over 4,000 women, many of which who ultimately admitted that the whole phase did not add to their life. It was something that they ultimately had to heal from. I meet a lot of born-again Christians who are trying to heal from their whole phase. I meet a lot of women who aren't religious at all, who are trying to figure out how to navigate what they've done to themselves after that period of their lives. I meet far too many women who wish they didn't, then are happy that they did. I will say this though, the whole phase, when applied later in life, strategically and tactfully, can be everything you thought it would be in your youth. After a divorce, after being widowed, after breaking away from a lot of toxic relationships that are long-term, after having your family, getting your career, doing all the things you wanted to do with your life, coming to a place where you're single, more mature, more set in who you are and your identity, the whole phase can be productive for a time. I've seen it renew women in a lot of different ways, help them discover new identities and learn more about who they were and what they really wanted from relationships, but only when applied with caution and purpose. I've also seen older women destroy their self-esteem and their identities as well. It has a place, but I don't believe that place is in college or high school. I believe it's after being divorced, after being widowed, after long-term relationships that took up a long part of your life. I believe after motherhood, after all of those phases that women are ultimately going after the career, again, after the life's goals have been met. So like I said, I think that the whole phase has a place, but it's not where people generally put it. And is so much more damaging to a young woman trying to figure out who she is, to learn who she is from people who don't respect her, who don't have concern for her safety, for her physical health, for her mental health, who don't care about the result of her life, and who ultimately are just there for the moment. I wish more people were dedicated to trying to slow young women down, to back them away from that whole phase thing, instead of all these women talking about, go be young, go have fun, go experience life. That's not the way you should experience life if you don't know who you are. If you're just discovering it. People aren't disposable. You aren't disposable. The men you encounter aren't disposable. The whole phase is all fun and games until somebody decides you're disposable first. And if that happens enough times, then you start to believe it. For many women, the whole phase becomes like a hit of dope. They get high on it in the moment. It numbs their pain, their disappointment, their trauma, but it also adds to it. Many women have described their whole phases to me in terms of alcoholism or drug addiction. They got their hit of validation. They get their hit of desire for the moment. The whole phase is where a young woman goes to destroy her psyche. I truly believe that. It's my hope that everybody who watches my video has healthy love. I understand that sometimes young women watch my videos. And so if no one's told you yet, I want to be the one to tell you, slow down. Please slow down. That's all I got for now. Follow me at Cafe24 on Instagram. I'll get with y'all later.